So hello and welcome to the inaugural edition of Chat AEC Tech. This podcast series explores the latest developments and upcoming trends in architecture, engineering and construction technology. And in this episode, we will discuss AI in construction and a new report that shares some interesting information on construction AI startups. In addition, our panelists will share topics that they have found interesting over the last few weeks. My name is Aarni Heiskanen. I'm a consultant, blogger, software developer at aec-business.com, and our fantastic panel of experts includes Cristina Savian, CEO and founder of BWise. She's now in Italy, but typically you can find her in Dubai. Enrique Nadales Clavero is a BIM consultant at Tylko Advisors and the host of the BIM Cafe podcast. Enrique is from Spain, and Jaan, Saar, head of digital construction at the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications of Estonia. And Martyn, co-founder of X3D Media, AEC Magazine, and Develop 3D Magazine. Well, I'm really happy that we are finally having this discussion, and let's start with a personal question. How do you use generative AI in your work or otherwise? And maybe Cristina, you can start.
Well, okay. So this is definitely, an interesting topic. Because all our lives certainly has changed in the last, 4 or 5 months since the rise of, ChatGPT. I can't deny, and now I'm trying to use AI, and I don't know if you're aware, but there are these amazing websites where they actually collect all of these feature tools, AI feature tools, and I'm always on the hunt on the best of the best. Having said that, I do certainly use a lot on my day-to-day work. In terms of, helping with, marketing messages, fixing another way of saying the same things, not to be repetitive. So definitely for language, as obviously English is not my first language. So definitely I found an amazing, assistant. I'm yet to use it. I know there is a lot of, application for Excel and, and spreadsheets. I'm still yet to explore that. And I don't really use them. I'm not a designer. I mostly do, spend my days writing business cases or go-to-market strategies. So, but yeah, certainly has made, has found a way into my life. But yeah, still exploring. So looking forward to hear from the others what you use it for.
Yeah. Jaan.
Yeah, mostly what I use, I tried to try everything new, but I've ended up using mostly ChatGPT and Microsoft Bing because it's right there built into Skype, which is kind of cool. For referencing, sometimes for searching. So it is kind of like if you're, instead of Google, you use ChatGPT to get a quick answer if you have a really good sentence to ask it. Sometimes I try to use it to maybe structure some thoughts or ideas, or give me kind of a template to work on, something like that. But yeah, often in Estonian, it fails miserably sometimes. But it's really interesting to see the difference between ChatGPT and Bing Chat, because Bing is using slightly different sources. Obviously, if you have any questions related to any profession or somebody, then LinkedIn's database is right there, and it gives you the source of information, which is also quite useful sometimes, because ChatGPT just, it blurs everything out, but it generally does quite a good, cool thing. And personally, I've used it, for example, last weekend, we had a big slice of boar meat, and we wanted to cook that in a ceramic grill. And where do you get a recipe for that? So, and of course, we typed it into ChatGPT, and we had one of our friends had a friend who was a professional cook or a grill master, and then we got a recipe from him but ChatGPT gave us almost exactly the same recipe. So that was kind of cool. And I've helped my kids to do homework with AI as well.
Wow, this is interesting. But I, because I don't have kids, but have you really used one for a recipe? Like, I have this in my fridge. What shall I cook? But that's very bad for an Italian, and I guess for Spanish as well.
Yeah,
Part of our culture.
I haven't used it yet for the kitchen now.
What have you done with it, Enrique?
Well, it's something that Cristina mentioned, and is for me will be the definition of the AI of my daily work is assistant. I use it as my assistant, like keeping notes, making summaries or briefing from sort of articles. And as you mentioned, Aarni also on a podcast, so it's very useful to do all these posts to promote it and do some briefings. Also research about the profiles I'm going to interview on my show. Also throwing the LinkedIn profiles will give me some information about this person, but I'm not a fully believer of ChatGPT or AI in general. I always want to keep a critical eye on it because for some personal stuff, I also been using it, asking them questions. I know the answer, and it not always fit with my reality, right? So I think it's important to don't just believe it like some kids might do or some teenagers do, like do their homeschool with the ChatGPT. Can fail. I understand it can fail too. Now, so the information I read is until 2020, 22 or 2021, right? So the latest thing you ask him for something, him or her, or something more recent, is very doubtful also in the answers, right? So always with a critical eye, I would say. But yeah, this assistant or someone to do the repetitive task, I would say.
Yeah, you can ask it who's the king or queen of England, and it'll give you an interesting answer.
Yeah. And Jaan, I completely actually failed on the ChatGPT. Was looking for some statistics. How long it takes to find statistics in construction. They're always in unknown reports. And actually, ChatGPT failed miserably. And Microsoft, being actually the chat, found the correct ones. So what I found sometimes, I tried in few of them until I'm kind of happy with the answer. I think you still need to know what you're looking for, because otherwise, you really fail. And I have, without naming one particular customers where English is not his language, and they tend to use it a bit too much lately, and the answers are just taking that for granted, and it's a risk. It's a massive risk.
Yeah, of course, I had to ask ChatGPT, who is Aarni Heiskanen? And the answer was, he is the CEO of Catera.
Oh, really?
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice job, Aarni.
It was
I didn't know who I was. I checked.
In the right industry, but...
but you didn't do a really good job with Catera there, Aarni, did you?
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, let's move on to the report that I think I mentioned. It's a company called AO PropTech, which is they say they are Europe's largest PropTech venture capital firm, investing in technologies, companies that are disrupting the built world. And they recently released a report that maybe it's more from the investor's point of view, a report that examines how AI can be potentially used to change the world, in the built world, and what kind of applications there already are. So the report is not really long, but it kind of breaks down pretty nicely the application areas of AI currently. Of course, it talks a lot about real estate or PropTech startups, but in general, I think it's a pretty good report. So, do any of you have any comments? What did you find something interesting or surprising, perhaps, in the report?
Well, I can start. For me, the most interesting thing is that the construction and the manufacturing world are not really at the queue as we usually see them with at least with the investments of the deal close, which is mainly what they talk in the report, right? we're used to see always on the bottom top, agriculture, hunting, and construction, and so on. So it's quite inspirational to finally see that the construction is kind of fighting to be in the middle position or going also up in a new technology that definitely is gonna change the industry. So that for me was the most impressive thing to see. Okay, the construction manufacturing industries are there in a good place to start this race, because this is starting right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, the aspect that, construction sector, which is generally known for lack of digitization and being a laggard in adopting this, is kind of now grabbing onto AI stuff quite quickly. And in Estonia as well, we have this, one of the biggest contractors. They started an innovation program to implement AI tools for their project management, which was quite interesting as well. But to be honest, reading the report, I didn't recognize many of the solutions they mentioned there. I have stumbled across many, but
I was waiting for that.
But not all of them.
We don't need to pretend. It's true.
I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone, but have you heard of this company before? Apparently, these largest VC firms in Europe. Because I found the report very interesting. I asked two of the most knowledgeable, people and investors and people that help to get the raise, the funds and everything, and none of them knew about this company. So I'm a bit surprised. How can they possibly be the largest in Europe if we never heard of them? And exactly like you, Jaan, I don't recognize these companies apart from one. So perhaps, I don't know, I really don't want, as I said, I don't want to be disrespectful for anyone, but perhaps they are very well known in the VC firms, just not in the built environment, because there are much more well-known firms. They've been doing this for 30, 40 years. Maybe they just happen to have a cross, boundary with, some of them, yes, they do happen to be in built environment. So they say they invest in, in construction. But I'm afraid I just don't see them, to be, on the same level of some others, that we all know. So
yeah. I noticed a few of those companies that were startups that were mentioned in the report, but naturally there are so many nowadays, so there are hundreds. So it's difficult to of course to know. But one thing that I found interesting was that they say that one of the challenges for applying generative AI in construction is the lack of readily available data. So I think there is a lot of data, but maybe the readily available is the keyword here. So
it's not structured. It cannot be searched. And I'm sorry, but we just explained, perfectly clear why ChatGPT gives you crappy answers, because if it doesn't have, if it's got rubbish in, it's got rubbish out. And we've been, not us, they've been working in the industry for over 20 years. Like, we all know, sorry, Aarni, I know it's a lot more than for you, but, this is what I'm saying is we all know that our fundamental problem is not the application of AI, is the foundation of AI. We need structured information, and it's very, very, very challenging, to use it. So,
well, hang on, Cristina. Actually, I would a little bit oppose you there, because I agree fully with the fact that we have the information management in construction is a mess. It is a total mess, and it is unstructured. But that's where I think that these generative AI models can actually help us, because we can use them to start structuring the data so they can identify what is what, and maybe structure it for us so we can actually use the data. So I would say my real hope is that with these new large language models and generative AI tools, we can finally start to see more structured data emerging from this pool of, unstructured nonsense that we have currently. And as I'm working a lot with classification systems and standardizing, And that is a really painful job, to be honest. And it's always very controversial. I really hope that in the future, it might not matter that much, that we really apply, exactly this classification system. We use these parameters to describe. We just feed it to the machine, and the machine will recognize what it is and be able to use that and make the analysis and give us results based on that.
I actually completely agree with you in the sense that the potential, it's immense. Obviously, what we need is start finding some very, simple tools where we can just start asking, they are okay, start learning all of this about my business, start getting all of this data in there, and then start trying to derive this, insightful and start asking answers. I mean, simple, tools now, you can add a lot of PDFs and then ask, about information on the PDF. So if we think about it, I'm sure it's not going to take long when we I'm on Digital Construction Week next week, and there are actually quite a few presentations on AI, and I'm sure someone has already started doing this, and I obviously probably need to wait for some significant result, and we still need to be able to kind of validate and sense check. But I agree with you, Jaan, is the potential is enormous.
I also think that here we are gonna pay as an industry, sadly, all the years of unstructured and categorized data, because we need to teach the AI, and this is a different topic, right? How to feed it with all that information. And it's important that now we have like a second chance in industry to be born again and provide the data correctly, even though we don't know where it is and how to provide it. But it's really important to teach it. I know I talk to my ChatGPT or any AI like a kid, like this sentence, comma, because I think it's the way they process better the information. So if we do correctly for the current projects in a project type or whatever in the construction industry, that way we can get the benefit on the future. But sadly, we are at the starting point as everyone else as an industry, but we have so much homework to be done before that. If we hurry up a bit with the help of the AI, like you, Cristina, just said, we can catch up, but we need to give the information structure with the classification, with the system, with the standard. I don't know, and I know it's a horrible job, but we have a second chance here, guys, to don't mess it up.
Yes, and who knows, we might be able actually to make the biggest jump because our data is so bad that, we can, improve that. But, this week I'm repurposing one of my lectures from, university to another, and I actually found this amazing video editing, scripting editing tool. It took about 12 hours to learn my voice. It now perfectly overdubbed my voice. And it's unbelievable, right? So think about when we start doing this and applying, on a day-to-day, at work.
Okay. So Martyn, you were able to join us now.
That literally next to my router, it's just not reaching. It's very weird. I don't know if routers kind of eventually fade over time and it doesn't stretch, but so yeah, I'm literally sat next to my router, which I will not touch. But yeah, I am here.
Yeah. So we were discussing how we use AI in our work or otherwise. So or generative AI specifically. So do you use generative AI?
So I try to use the ChatGPT, just throwing things at it, like write an article in the style of Martin Day about why Autodesk customers are upset with the constant price increases. And what I got back was quite scary because it obviously gone off within 2 seconds, read everything I've written, and came back with a pretty coherent article of about 500 words. A lot. When I write, I tend to write 3,000 words. So you've got to kind of like, you're in at the beginning, get a coffee because it's going to be a while. And ChatGPT concisely did it in 500 words. So, but it is amazing. And I think, ChatGPT is amazing. And some of the stuff that's in Adobe Suite is amazing. And the things that we use every day. But this really is kind of the amuse-bouche of AI. It's so small and it's blown our minds. And I've seen stuff that's coming that has totally blown my mind. And if it does come in, it's going to, well, it's going to wreak havoc basically on the industry if it comes in as fast as it's looking like it is. So while being able to, I mean, you can even take courses now on how to write a chat GPT thing, which makes me laugh. It's kind of like, the whole idea was that you're supposed to be able to say exactly what you want, but now we realize we don't know how to say exactly what we want. So we have to take a lesson in being concise. But
prompt engineering is what they're calling it, right?
Prompt engineering.
Prompt engineering. Have you seen the salaries?
Well, this is so the thing I'm quite lucky about is that I'm writing about things that haven't happened yet. So I'm writing about products that are in beta or alpha, and so there's not really a lot of text out there. So I feel quite comfortable that ChatGPT is not gonna. I'm gonna be the one that's gonna be feeding it, because it isn't gonna know about the stuff that's happening by stealth companies. So I'm feeling slightly at a good position, but at the same point. When you see things like Hypar, when they've I mean, it really is just an interface. You're just putting text in, it's driving variables that were already there, and then it's producing a model. So it looks like magic because it's just text to BIM, when in fact, you know, most of the work's already done for you in the background. It's just you would have had to be more explicit with a mouse to say I want, or some variables. I want 25 stories or whatever. So I kind of feel that we're getting wowed by ChatGPT, while the real interesting stuff is kind of amongst us. And it's like things like Swap, it's things like Augmenta, which really apply AI to creating geometry, and not just geometry, but creating, in case of Swap, it creates detailed design. You literally start by drawing out a bounded area, and you create spaces in it. I know there's lots of Revit people that don't use spaces, but you better start using them. Where you define, you know, this is an office, this is a bedroom, that's a corridor. There's no walls, there's no window, there's no interior partitions or anything. It's spaces with no walls and no windows. It'll go off and orient the building towards the best for solar gain. It'll then put the windows in. It'll then look at all your, well, the work would have been done before. They've seen how you select your wall styles and your material types, and it'll then build the model for you into 1 to 300 detail. And then it will produce all the drawings for you in 40 minutes. So if you're producing a rectilinear building that's really boring, and you don't mind it being really boring, but it's fast, you can do 6 months work in 40 minutes. And if you're an architect who charges by the hour, you're not even going to get a full hour's billing for it. So it's early days, and today they just announced they've raised $10 million more dollars, so that's 17 million in total. I think they've had. Every VC I talk to is really excited by it, and it's what I'm hearing from the sort of top 100 practices is, how can we get rid of drawings? And I was like spending most of the last 2 years going, yeah, how are we going to get rid of drawings? So I was going around looking at all these applications, and then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, we're not just getting rid of drawings, we'll also do the detailed modeling for you as well if it's like really boring and rectilinear. And that's just the start. That's the opening gambit, is we will do your rectangles for you. And if you're building a hospital or a student accommodation or a boring office, you can still make it look interesting by designing the facade, but the actual building itself can be designed by AI. And so there was a great company called Case based in New York who were consultants for BIM, and they had a great event called Buildings Equals Data. And it was mind-blowing. It really was a great event. But I think now we're about on the cusp of where buildings equals recipes. And that is a problem. It's a problem for everybody, and it's a good problem and a bad problem. But you're going to see the most boring, run-of-the-mill bread and butter jobs you'll be competing against somebody who's using AI, and they'll be reusing the information of a successful project or many successful projects that happened before based on that criteria. And
here is the challenge, Martyn, is can we really, plug all the brains, the creativities, and all of the designers, engineers' knowledge in a tool and just, will we get the same results?
Well, the problem is that AI is spectacularly funky at the moment when it kind of responds to you. But and the other problem is that most of the drawings and documents and models it's going to learn off have got lots of crap in them, and so it's going to learn bad ways. You have to make sure that your old data is perfect, and there'll be probably hours and months spent on making sure the stuff that gets put in is good quality. But don't be fooled that buildings are difficult because they follow logic and they have variables. And that is completely.
I actually think you can follow the process. You can have and you can follow the process and use the technology, but the people element is also always the predictable one. So I'm afraid I actually don't. I think we still need the human input.
Yeah, the critical eye on the top to verify other things. This is
the thing that's really
one person will need to check the things.
The thing that's really fascinating is I think the software will be so fast that you're not giving the client long enough to actually dwell. They can come in one morning, give you the brief, you can feed it into the machine, you get 20 different versions of it at the other end. You as the architect pick the one you like the best, you get it costed, and then 2 weeks later the guys are going, oh right, oh okay. You have to have a process of digesting what it is that you're being offered on the scale of a building. I think it's very weird for you to go, yes, that's it, I'll take it. I was speaking to a company that worked on a project where they were really, really pressurizing the BIM process, where everything was working in parallel. And so they were really ahead of in the timeline of getting this building built. And the client okayed it. They ordered the steel to be cut for the atrium. And then the client changed their mind a month later, but the steel had already been ordered. And then that was a contractual problem with you need to give clients long enough to digest what it is that you're offering them so that they can mull it over. So I think we might actually get to a phase where the practice is faster than the client's processing capabilities of it.
Jaan, you had a comment.
Jaan,
what I wanted to comment was about looking at where the really practical applications of AI, these generative language models is happening is maybe in coding, and there what it's opening up, or where the real potential is really just speeding up the process. So that's true, you can speed it up, and in our industry I've also seen various tools already that work very well on generating different kinds of layouts and optimizing layouts, which takes a lot of time actually, and it's very tedious work, but you can do faster. But with coding, it's if you remember this mobile game Flappy Bird, it was really popular at one point. And the developer took it off the App Store because it was too addictive. It took him about, let's say, 100 hours to program the whole game. The same developer now tried it with only AI tools, and he was able to do it in 1 hour. Just describing to different AI tools through text chat what you wanted to achieve, and that is where the potential lies. It's not only the way we can speed up processes, but also that we're opening up the door to you don't have to be a programmer anymore to develop software. You just describe what you want to a language model, to an AI, and it will code it for you. So we could in certain areas in our industry as well, I think, give the clients the tools maybe to do some of the architectural engineering work. Well, not maybe engineering work. Let's stay away from that for now. But some of the architectural work, at least some of the creative stuff, also to get them more involved, to get them faster into iterative processes.
Yeah,
so on this, sorry, Aarni.
Yeah, I was saying that I'm an architect originally. I've been doing design for some time, not anymore, but a large portion of design is actually just rote work, so it's not anything creative. So there's 95% of the work is something that is very mechanical, I would say.
And very repetitive. And that is the part probably, I do believe in Martyn, I'm writing business case rapid prototyping services, one of the biggest clients, I believe, there is a strong, business case for that, for for providing stuff. There is massive value for the clients exactly for, that purpose. They are going to evaluate different ideas very, very rapidly. They see the consequences and they're not going to come back, later with, oh, sorry, we don't want that. They look like that anymore. At the same time, I'm, from obviously my experience, but just even looking at all the BIM, the contracts, legal requirements, where you start putting in the digital requirements. How do we trust an AI? Would you trust an AI to build your house? I mean, what is the legal implications of letting AI doing the structural calculation?
You still have to have it checked by somebody, but you can, as long as it's been programmed correctly, and everyone's using BIM and Revit and solid modeling tools to model very life engineering, which is essential. We do rely on software a lot, and I think it's difficult, but the reality is that you still will have to go and get it signed off by somebody. And the thing is that it shouldn't be that difficult. The whole one of the whole kind of fallacies of BIM is that there'd be this one single model, and it turns out that is not the case. And in fact, it was a really stupid idea to start with, because why would you stick all this data in one big file in a piece of software that can't handle all that data, which then takes hours or collapses under the pressure?
Yeah, but we know where they come from, right? And where the data will come from.
And then structural engineers will create their own BIM model because they don't trust the architects, and the MEP engineers, they'll do a bit of both. And then you've got the construction BIM, and then there's the Viz generator. Everything kind of is a mess anyway, and we thought we'd have a coherent data solution. And I kind of wonder, even now moving forward, with looking at things like Autodesk's Forma, which is a very interesting computer science approach, I think, and I'm very looking forward to seeing what they can do. But if you have this giant data lake with all your data in it, how does it work with the way that I don't trust you, structural engineer. Structural engineer doesn't trust me, architect. Construction person needs completely different things in their BIM anyway. So how does that work in the kind of future? Nothing's set in stone, but the thing that I'm very confident of is AI likes recipes, and we have to start looking at buildings as recipes. And the kind of people who will be not in this game will be the signature architects. It'll just mean more Rhino, because there's no way that the AI will be able to really understand what it is that Zaha's planning to do, or it's the kind of crazy geometry stuff. There are other tools that might come in for that, but I think that they will be relatively unaffected in those kind of futuristic, high risk buildings. But I think the problem's going to come in the meat and potatoes of the architecture world and the construction world. But I don't quite know how they're going to join up, because they don't join up already. And so having an AI do it all for you does seem quite incredible. And maybe that's the flaw in it, is that it won't be the perfect structural engineer, MEP engineer, architect, planning, document creator. Who knows? There's quite a lot of different aspects to it. But
I think when it comes to AI, what I have experienced and what I've seen, from this image generation also and text generation, it's remarkably, incredibly mediocre. So that is the issue with the generative part and the creative part. It is fantastically mediocre. It is by essence, it is taking, other works and it's trying to synthesize and averaging out something mediocre. So that's where always I think humans will be needed, is to go above that mediocrity to really develop something incredible. But I would also raise another question here, that when talking to engineers, structural engineers who take responsibility for whether or not a building will collapse or a bridge will collapse, where people could get hurt or killed. They in these fields, they're already talking that the young students, the young engineers, they're trusting too much the software. So there, you know, in schools, you have to go through, you have to do all these calculations by hand to understand them, and they still basically check and do all the calculations on their current projects as well, just to check that, you know, everything is coming out correctly.
Yeah.
But even with the software that is not AI enabled, there's already a lot of automation, and it's, you know, really easy. Like, you know, let's just trust the software. So really, my question is, can we, if we apply also AI now also to engineering, and it looks really nice, are we, and it gets really complex, are we able to trust it? Can we?
Exactly. This is what I was saying, you know, earlier, is how can we use our, you know, background and, you know, and put this background and experience and knowledge, you know, into the AI. It's impossible because, you know, yes, we do have design manuals, and yes, we can teach the AI, we can digest the design manual that took us most of us 15 years to learn, and still need to double check every few minutes. But then it will always, you know, where is our knowledge, our understanding, our sixth sense when we're doing things? No, this does not sound right. That comes from the knowledge, from the experience, from the years and years and years doing the job. And it is the reason why. But it is the reason why we, you know, the big projects get awarded to the most knowledgeable people with a lot of experience and, you know, evidence of delivering that work. So how can we trust, you know, an AI to do that?
There's something that, you know, the industry's faced trouble before from design build, and all these tools are giving design builders, oh my God, the best Christmas presents ever. And the industry is going to be competing against people who, if they own the project, they have the team that designs the project, they own the supply chain for the project. You're going to be seeing a lot of these things being the risk. Architects don't really like taking on that level of risk unless you're in the kind of high echelons of signature architects. So it's going to be the developers that are running with it. And you just look at TestFit, and TestFit's doing really, really well in the developers world. And I just look at that and go, oh my God, this architecture sucks. It's like lots of rectangles, and it's like lots of parking spaces, and it's like my kind of hell. It's not European architecture, but it's what's happening in the States. And obviously condo suites are obviously important, but it just wouldn't happen here. That's why they haven't come over. But that thing is giving the developers what they need to know, which is price, and it's giving them a guarantee of the money side of things, and then they'll go and sign off on that. And if they know they can produce the designs in an hour, and they get all the documents ready for planning permission, then they're going to go down that route, and architects are going to be cut out. But there are other firms I'm talking to who I won't mention their names, but they've already got design teams where there's only one architect on big projects, and that this one architect essentially designs the facade, the volumes and the spaces, make sure it meets the brief, and then everyone else in the project is an engineer, because the thing that's important is how that building is fabricated and how they actually put it together. And that is kind of also a kind of a scary thing, because that's happening within multidisciplinary architectural practices. So this is going, you know, the market's going to change, and people need to have as many varied skills as possible to be ready to kind of like flip from what they're doing currently. It might change, it might not exist anymore, to, you know, being the overviewer of it, or maybe it's something on the sidelines, a separate a shift sideways. It's not just AI, it's developers. It kind of changes the playing field, in my view.
My understanding is that instead of just having a technological change or breakthrough, we will see new business models also emerge from this. But what would you say to companies who are now trying to understand what's going on and maybe do something? What would you suggest to architects, engineers, and contractors to do about AI right now?
You got a choice. You either learn what's going to happen and see what's coming down the line, or you end up reacting. and I would sooner be the person who knows what's coming down the line. So I'm organizing Next Dev and Next Build and Next Dev, a quick plug, but I'm deep into Next Dev, and Next Dev is about how this industry needs to change, because we have old software that's been written to work in a certain workflow, which we have kind of decided is holding us back. And there are loads of people who want to get rid of parts of it. But as part of the day, I've got Adi from Swap, I've got Francesco from Augmenta, I've got Altaf from Snaptrude, I've got Anthony from Hypar, I've got Paul from Arcol, all in one room, one day. I've got Finch 3D hopefully coming. I'm waiting for the Pam to get back to me. But so you can come to this event and see these things back to back, and then talk to the people about what it is that this means to you. And I think that most of the software is actually in beta and alpha. It's not, and Conic as well. I've got Conic. There's a whole load of players who are developing what I'm saying is BIM 2.0, the next generation. And you've got to come and you've got to see the stuff, either download it, ring them up, try and listen to what they've got to say, because these are the people who are going to be acquired by an Autodesk or a Bentley and you're going to see this in commercially developed in the future. They're not, Adi getting another $10 million today. There's a whole lot of interest in Swap. I mean, that whole process of going from 6 months to 40 minutes.
So, Martyn, if I would just summarize your discussion, is just try it. Don't just,
well, you can't
look at
try
it, but also
this is the problem. You can't try it. It's not out yet.
Okay, but that's also an issue here, because whenever we talk about AI, and there was this really nice graph I saw somewhere, I think it's from Fundamental, was that, you had this big ball about who's talking about AI, and you had this really tiny circle who's actually doing something with AI. So is it the same situation right now in our industry that we see?
Yeah, it's a problem.
There's a lot of, you can plug Chat GPT into most anything, and
that's not really
cool
that is AI, but it's not going to change the world. It's changing the input. TestFit is not AI. It's a solver for multivariable problems. Yeah, it looks like AI because it's so bloody clever. You see the result of it, you think, my God, it did all that. That's amazing. Anything that seems like magic, I'm saying is AI. Because it's not actually AI, but it just happens to be so utterly impressive. And I think that unfortunately the good stuff that I'm seeing isn't available yet. It's probably I think maybe Swap is available, but they're only taking on very, very specific projects from certain companies that are doing the things they focused on. I don't think there are many European firms working with them. But I got inundated when I ran that article on Swap by people, design IT directors saying to me, we need to speak to them. My board wants us to speak to them. And so that's the first reaction I've ever had, where people are demanding to be introduced to a company, because the promise of what they're offering is so amazing. And then Marty Rosemanith, who ex-Autodesk, he was in charge of architectural desktop, God love him. Then he joined Revit, then they got bought by Autodesk. Now he's doing something very similar to Swap, but he's not using AI, he's using procedural methods and graph databases. And that could be another kind of successful approach. So he's also, Marty's coming to the show as well. Oh, I keep forgetting, but these technologies are really, they're very formative. They're in alpha, beta, and they're going to be out in the next 1 or 2 years.
Yeah. And Enrique, Enrique, I interviewed Architectures, Juan Bordallo Ruiz, a couple of weeks ago. You may know them.
No, I don't know them personally, but I read the interview.
They are in Malaga.
No, serious. This is where I'm from as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, that was also amazing what they showed me, designing I don't know if Martyn would call it a good architecture, but anyway, really fast modeling and using rules and AI, and it was fantastic.
Was it rectilinear? Or was it?
Yeah. But you can tweak it a little bit. But basically, it's look like most of the architecture, residential apartments that we see in Finland look like that. But
but there's nothing wrong with rectilinear. It's a very effective and cost beneficial shape. But the other thing I wanted to say was that I was talking to a BIM company, I won't say who, and I was talking about how fast AI was coming and how scary it was. I was literally seeing another thing that's not yet is stealth mode. You draw rectangles, you press a button, and out comes a fully one-to-one scaled modular building, and you can change it to steel or wood or whatever, and all the production drawings come out of it. I'm saying, this is scary stuff. And the guy goes, yeah, it's coming really, really fast. And then I was talking about, the people who are complaining about BIM at the moment are mainly the signature architects, the large architectural firms that are finding that they're kind of paying a lot of money for something that's just standing still. And I said, just go out to them and just with a clean pad and just say, what is it you want? Because they're not going to buy your product because they see it's the same as the other one. And he said, well, we're a volume player. We can't do that because we need to sell volume, and the top architectural firms, 25% or less, aren't really worth that. And I was like, rewind that conversation to like 3 paragraphs before. I said, AI is coming really quickly. In 10 years' time, if Swap does what it says on the tin, how many copies of BIM as we know it today are these software companies going to be selling? Because it's going to be one instance on the cloud that spits out this stuff. You might need 1 copy to make some changes to it. You're not going to see this kind of like loads and loads of people with loads and loads of modeling tools, modeling away and doing drawings. It's going to be how are they going to get their money? And they've got shareholders, and their shareholders are going to expect the same kind of returns they've been getting, for the last 20 years or more. So I think there is also some myopic view in the software industry that something's coming that will actually make them have to change their business model, and it could be like an asteroid coming to their sales. I like the idea because I'd like to shake up the market, but I think I do hope for some stability, I think, but just for the sake of my magazine. But it's just like, the reality is that it's not just a game changer for the architects or the construction guys or for the structural engineers. It's also for the software companies, and it's for where the data goes and who you work with and how you work with them. It's not.
Yeah, but Cristina, you're about to say something. Pitch in.
Well, I just would like to comment in the sense that I have a completely different experience than Martyn. So I would like to challenge that, because I'm on the other end of writing the business cases and talking to executive boards on why their PI insurance is time 10 with the new business model, because it isn't tested, because they're using technology, but because they're selling data insights, because it's not what they used to do, because they're turning into a technology company and they're no longer at an architectural firms. And, I'm not sharing because obviously it's, one of my customers, but I can tell you this, most of the time I fail. And most of the time I fail to sell to the board on why, and the challenge is not because the technology is not available. I completely agree with you, Martyn. There is billions of technology available, and it's so bad that they're not actually looking at what is coming next and what the competition is going to adopt very soon. However, we know that we are a risk-adverse industry. And when you start thinking to all, and talking to all of these, boards of directors that have to sign off the project, that need to sign off this new business model, they need to, I can tell you this, they always say no. When we want to implement something like this, okay, what's the business case? In my case,
what are you kind of signing off? What things are you?
Well, the challenge is the justification on whatever it is. Every technology implication needs the business justification on why you want to spend the money, why that is better than the other, why that is saving money. Where do you know how hard it is to build all those business cases? Do you know how challenging it is to change from what they've known and they've been running the business for the last 20, 30 years? It's hard. I completely agree with you in the sense that they are going to miss out because the competition, one of their competitors is going to do it and they're not. What I'm saying to you is, what we want to just challenge it. It's very hard. It's very hard to pass legal because it's hard. It's hard to write these new, digital deliveries in any of these architecture, to turn an architecture firms into technology company. It's a different business model. They start, in the moment they start selling these data insights, they need to start, they start suddenly having issues they never had. Okay, what's the service level agreement? When I'm going to have access, my data is stored.
Yeah.
You know how challenging that is for an architectural firm? It's hard.
Digital deliverables are another thing which are a complete bloody mess. And it's become, so I'm mainly talking to the larger architecture firms here, but it's become such a significant cost to them to produce these digital deliverables. And from what they've told me, they feel that owners have gone to some professor somewhere to say, write me a document for digital deliverables. They get this kind of esoteric, non-realistic set of demand. They then create 300 pages demand. And so I've talked, and then it's utterly ridiculous, because what happens is, this is another problem I've got with the whole BIM industry, is that I'm fed up with
Martyn, we can tackle the whole BIM industry, all the problems here. Let's it's the AI topics.
It's just it's to do with I see people arguing all the time about how they structure their data, and we've got all these standards about how you structure their data. But even though we've got standards, we still can't structure our data well. So everyone starts arguing with each other about what they should do in one Excel spreadsheet and when the RFQs and what should be where. The reality is that I think 99% of the time the digital deliverables that get delivered are never updated, rarely if ever looked at, stuck in a drawer somewhere.
Completely agree. It's a tick box, but unfortunately there is also when who is on my side trying to write these business cases, how many times, yes, but we failed, we failed there, I didn't understand. It's like what we developed and what we've been trying to do with all of this, bringing digital technology for the last, 10 years has not really succeeded in many cases. And because it's not succeeded, it's giving us a really hard time to get the momentum that we need to bring this new amazing new AI technology that is coming to market, that we know is all coming. And then, yes, I completely agree with you. One of them finally will get it right. At the same time, one of the challenges that we have is that we know we are a risk adverse. We know our procurement model. Will it ever change? Yes, I don't know. I'm always hopeful that maybe in the Nordics and Estonia and Finland, do things in like a government level, on a completely different level than as Southerns, Europeans.
Yeah.
And as I spent over 15 years in the UK, and in the UK is, yes, maybe the procurement model will change there, but the rest of the world is never going to change. Everyone is always going to start delivering their little bits. So how are we going to join the dots? How we are really going to leverage the AI on a very, very long term?
Firms really need to be adopting BIM and trying to get the benefit for themselves. But many people have adopted BIM because they're late to the game, and they have literally doing it so that they can say we do BIM, but they're actually using it more like they used AutoCAD or 3D AutoCAD. I've been to practices that have got the kite mark, and when they were modeling a multi-story building, instead of modeling a multi-story building, they modeled every floor in the workspace separately. The only person who had a full model of that block was the guy in the Viz department who had to piece it all together from the Revit models he was given. And you just think, oh, this is crushing. But there are really good users and there are really bad users. And I think that the risk-averse nature of practices is one of the major things that we need to try and educate people to step out step out of the
Yeah.
box.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not down to people. I was at UK Construction Week last week, and on a round table with CIOB talking about, you know, the challenges to implementing BIM. We've been saying about these challenges, and they are the same. You know, we've been repeating them. Even
Yeah.
ChatGPT learned
Yeah.
what they are. We still can fix them. Why?
Yeah, I've been
Because
in
it's
the
people.
industry since I've been in the industry since the early 1980s. So I know that every change takes at least 10 years. But
Don't you think
I'm
there is
afraid
no-
I'm afraid
Oh.
our time is up now, because
Okay.
I know you have something else to do. But really interesting discussion, I must say, and this is a fantastic start for our new series, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode.
I think I have the perfect closing for this episode.
Okay, go ahead.
Which is, I used it on my opening speech at the Digital Twin conference in Dubai a few months ago. And I think it just summarized very well. So is AI the answer to all our prayers? I decided to put it to the test. I asked ChatGPT to write today's opening speech. It was fast, but heartless, lacking a fundamental element. It had no soul. Without a doubt, AI can help us to uncover insights we were not previously aware of, but without the souls of us, the passionate global leaders in the digitally enabled built environment, the results will be powerless and heartless.
Thank you.
Very good.